Welcome to the Set Apart Podcast. My name is Oscar, and I'm the host of the show. And today, if you are an entrepreneur, a businessman or a businesswoman, a family man, family woman, somebody that maybe lives in a condo or knows somebody in a condo, lives in Miami, any of those things, maybe just somebody that, loves podcasts, then this is a great episode for you. Today we have Nestor Cueto with Cueto Engineering. He's a structural engineer, a good friend of mine. We've done a few projects together, and your knowledge is very intricate. It's not just structural engineering. There's such a dynamic of entrepreneurship, family, life lessons, like the whole nine. So I think you bring a lot of value to the show, and I hope that our viewers can enjoy. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about you.
Where to start, right?
Yeah, where do you start?
Well, I'm originally from Miami, born and raised here. My parents are, my dad's from Cuba. My mom was born in Panama, but her family's from Spain. I grew up here in Miami, and I always had a knack for building things. Like when I was a kid, my whole room was Legos. I used to love building little Lego kingdoms and taking my Ninja Turtles and having them storm the castles of the Lego kingdom. And so building for me was always I knew that's what I wanted to design things to build. And so that's kind of what sparked my interest in engineering, was figuring out that, there's a way to figure out how to design it, and then it gets built. And I've always been good at math and science, so it's kind of easy for me to do that, And so I excelled at math, excelled at science, and when I got to college, I was like, okay, engineering, let's go for it. I just didn't know which engineering I wanted to do yet. I knew I kind of wanted to do something in the construction industry, so I figured let's go with structures. And it just started making sense. And I started learning about steel and concrete and timber and masonry and all of the engineering fundamentals behind it. And I just fell in love with it. And for me, it was I kind of knew that passion from as a kid. And so I followed through to it until today.
And you never second guessed what type of engineering or the path. It was you felt like the path was always very clear.
I knew I wanted to do engineering, but I also knew I wanted to own a business. Mm-hmm. One of the things when I was a kid was my dad always kind of instilled that entrepreneurial spirit in me. I remember back in middle school, he would take me to Costco, and I would buy the blow pops and the airheads and sell them to my friends at school for a little markup, right? That's great. And so he would take it. He told me, and my dad's amazing with this, and he really instilled this in entrepreneurial spirit in me, where he would say, "Listen, I'm gonna loan you the money to buy these boxes of candy. Once you sell them, you got to pay me back with interest. Okay? There was no free rides here. Pay me back with interest, and you're gonna learn what it's like to be in business, right?" And so I went with my backpack every day. My friends wanted a blow pop, 25 cents. I got you. Airhead, 25. I got you.
I got you.
And so, so that kind of instilled that in me, where it was okay, if there's a demand for it, and I'm able to provide that for somebody, where they're getting what they need, and I'm also being able to benefit from it, and it's a win-win. Mm-hmm. So that jump started the entrepreneur side of me. The building of Legos started the engineering side of me, and then eventually after I was working in the engineering industry for 10 years after I graduated, I kind of was put in a situation where I can either continue to work for a huge company, which I was working for Bechtel, which is an international construction engineering company. They work on everything from mining and metals projects to nuclear power plants to big mega projects. Mm-hmm. And so I was working down at Turkey Point, and when that project ended, it was kind of okay, well, this project's done. The nature of the business is you need to either go to the next project or come up to headquarters and work from here, or, good luck.
Yeah.
So what I did was, I kind of looked at my options. I weighed my options, and at the time, to throw another cog in the wheel is my firstborn son was on his way. Okay, so I had an amazing job with amazing benefits, good job security, with a kid on the way and all my family here in Miami. Wow. All right. So I figured I had three options. I can either uproot and go to the next project and wouldn't have the family support there.
Because it wasn't Miami.
It wasn't in Miami. They gave me three options. I could either go to Queensland, Australia, Santiago, Chile, or some small town in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. So I was like, I don't really want those options right now, especially with what's happening in my personal life. So from there, I said, well, that's option number one. Is I go with them. Option number two is I can join a local firm. I can, go get a job at a local firm as an engineer, professional engineer, and work for somebody else. The third option was try your own thing, see how that works. So luckily I had a good job. I had done a lot of savings because I'd worked a lot of overtime at Turkey Point. We worked night shift a lot because it was an active power plant. So when they're down, they're losing money. So they had us working night shift a lot. And there was times where, and that's time and a half when you work for a company.
Yeah, you're killing it on the time and a half.
So what I did was I paid off all my student debts with that time and a half, and I saved a lot into my retirement accounts. And one of the things I learned along the way is you can use the funds in your retirement account up to a certain amount to open your own business. And that kind of was like here's your opportunity.
And that's like a 401k or
401k IRA. Yeah,
that's cool.
There's certain rules to it where you can take 50% of your total project up to like $50,000. So I figured, look, let me take the 50% that I have available to me. That'll cover me for I don't know, a good maybe 6 months. 6 months, right? And if it's 6 months that I see it's not working, I'm not doing it. I'll go option number two and go work for another company. And so I kind of took the leap of faith, right? Newborn kid on the way, no job security, no benefits, nothing like that. And I was like, look, I'm gonna bet on myself. And so I did that. And today I'm here still. This is 12, almost 13 years later.
How was that first? That first, I would say, because my story is different, but this episode is about you. If you want to know my story, you go to episode 1.
I definitely want to hear your story, for sure. This is not just about me. This is about, entrepreneurship and all that.
No, I think it's important because sometimes people think that that the path to starting a business is very linear,
Never.
And, sometimes you have to get kind of creative, like I didn't even know about what you were saying. I have money at the company I was working with in 401k, but I never knew that,
Yeah, and it's kind of, you have to, sometimes you don't know the things that you don't know, so you got to figure them out.
Yeah.
Right?
So how was that let's say the first year, what type of projects were you working at compared to the projects that you're working on now?
So the way I started out was I got a list of every architect, engineering company, contractor, developer, real estate agents, anybody I could think of in the AEC industry, right? Architecture, engineering,
property
construction
managers.
industry, property managers, everybody I could think of. And I just started cold calling and emailing and saying, hey, I have a new company, Cueto Engineering. We do structural engineering, inspections, design. If you guys need any services, let me know. I'm happy to even come out and take a look and see, no fee. I'm not going to charge you to come out and take a look. And I was able to get a couple of realtors that said, hey, listen, we have these all the time. Our property inspectors are saying we need a structural engineer to come evaluate. We would be happy to have you come out and do that scope of work for us. We'd be happy to, have you introduce you to our clients. So I started a lot with residential inspections, right? Even though I came from nuclear power plants,
Yeah, humble yourself.
Designing big projects.
You got to do it.
But you got to do what you got to do, especially in that situation.
Our first project as a company was we changed an AC.
Well, that's it, right?
Yeah. And for I think $1,000 or $1,500.
My first job was crawling in somebody's crawl space. And it's like I didn't want to do it, but I went and bought myself a pair of coveralls, and a little mask to cover myself from the dust. And I went down there and I started looking at the structure, and I started looking to see the floor joists and to see do we have any issues with rot damage or termite damage? Are all the floor joists bearing on the load bearing walls like they're supposed to? Do we have any handyman supports down there that are basically sticks holding up this thing so it doesn't fall down?
Yeah.
How's the foundation looking? Is it cracking in the foundation? Is it overturning? Do we have any subsidence of the soils that are supposed to be supporting the foundation? All those things that I knew as an engineer, I was now applying to
A very small scale house.
inspections, right? To somebody's home.
But I don't know about you because I remember the first day that I had resigned, and then my first day on our own, my wife said, "Hey, what are you gonna do today?" I said, "I'm gonna start calling people."
That's it.
And I went from literally the first contact and just calling and calling. Hey, remember me? We started coming. Hey, remember me? Started coming. Hey, and you just started going. But even in like that's all I want to know. Like for me, even like changing that AC, man, I really felt really good.
It's a sense of accomplishment, right?
Yeah, it was, and that's why you're saying I like, it like hits me like in the chin because people don't really like it's people you talk about like starting a business and you talk about certain, circumstances. Like you had a kid on the way, we had just gotten married, and it sounds a lot easier than it really is sometimes. And like I don't know, I can imagine you like kind of like in there like looking with a flashlight and like taking like a second and being like, fuck, we're doing this,
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't help but be proud of yourself,
And so there's, obviously a learning curve, right? Never having owned a business before, never having really done this smaller scale of project, you kind of have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was kind of, learn and get better.
So what do you do now compared to, let's say, crawling in
Now we do inspections as well, but on a much larger scale.
what type of inspections do you do?
Some of the things that we're working on now is we work on a lot of county projects. We do building recertification inspections for a lot of county buildings, hospitals, government centers, waste processing facilities. Some of the bigger projects, and essentially we do the same. The same fundamentals of we inspect the structure to see if there's any deficiencies, both structural and electrical, because Cueto Engineering does structural and electrical. We have everybody certified in-house. And we tell the client or the owner, hey, here's what's wrong with your building. This is what needs to get fixed.
Yeah.
Here's a priority list. Here's what needs to get done like now, today. Here's what can be done in the next 3 to 6 months, next year, next 3 years, next 5 years. Right.
And is that part of like the 40-year recertification process?
So the 40-year recertification process in Miami-Dade County really has changed a lot over the last few years, especially since the Surfside collapse. Right, that was one of the things that was kind of like a catalyst, where it said we had this process in place, but it didn't serve us well.
How did that even happen, though?
I mean, there's a lot of investigation and documentation of why it happened, but part of it is
it's not even that
deferred maintenance.
But even, like we have issues like the FIU bridge. You have the Miami-Dade County, like the Miami-Dade College school that like 15 years ago. How do those things even happen?
Everything happens then you can't just pinpoint it to one thing, right? So usually it's oversight of quality control or lack of adequate maintenance over the years. Sometimes it's things like a concrete mix, right? The concrete mix wasn't right. Too much water was added. It wasn't poured in the right amount of time. The truck took too long to get there and it started hardening. There's a lot of different factors that can go into why a structure fails. And so part of what we do as structural engineers is help regulate that throughout the entire process, from the design to make sure we're meeting the code requirements, to make sure that we are incorporating a factor of safety in everything, to when we get to construction, where we're making sure that the contractors are following everything to the T, to the letter, right? And where things like grout pads are getting poured and the mixes are being done right? They're not echando agua with no sin querer,
Yeah. You're laughing because we were doing a job together, and our guys were pouring concrete like in a grout pad, and he's like, do you have what do you call those things
just to measure the water?
Yeah, but what do you call those things? Like if we're baking a cake,
It's a measuring cup.
Yeah, measuring cup.
Yeah.
But people don't realize how
it's a science.
It is a science.
It's a science. When it comes down to it, concrete mixes are a science. The design of the size of the foundation, it's a science. So it's important during construction to have that quality control. And when you find a contractor like yourself who's there and hears the engineer say, "Listen, let's make sure they're doing it," and you're responsive like that, for me, it's a huge sigh of relief, because it's like, all right, I'm not being the bad guy here.
Yeah.
You understand why I'm asking you to do these things.
Absolutely. And listen, at the job, because you see, like, if you go to like the comments, like if even like in Surfside, you go to the comments and it's like, or the bridge, or anything that happens is like, Miami's always trying to go too fast, and everybody's trying to cut corners, and so I understand that. Like at the end of the day, contractors, we do want to go fast. They have a lot of pressure from the owners. We have a lot of pressure from everybody.
Yeah.
But we live in such an area where it's so busy. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of salt. Like we really have to really slow the game down to make sure we do a good job.
And what helps a lot with that is education, right? Talking to seasoned contractors and engineers and people who have seen these things happen before and know why they happen and how to implement the procedures on site so that they get done properly and quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's always a three-legged stool. You have scope, you have budget, and you have schedule. Right? You want to make sure that things are done quickly, they're done well, and they're done cheap. Yeah. But you can't always make sure that you can't always have all three of those. Exactly.
Yeah. I always tell people, listen, you can have all three. I mean, you can have 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3.
It's hard to have all 3 of them.
It's hard to have all 3.
So do you ever feel, and this is like a real deep question, at least for me, do you feel that you as a structural engineer carry this like massive burden in designing these structures that we, the people, drive under, walk on top of, live inside of it?
Every time I do a calculation, right? So, and there's an engineer's creed that we as engineers kind of have to live by, right? And first and foremost, our duty and responsibility is to the public safety and welfare, right? Is everything we design, we have to think about somebody's going to be walking across this bridge. Somebody's going to be having their family live in this home, And so we kind of have to have that as part of ourselves when we're doing the design. If this was my family living in this house, I want to make sure that it's safe, right? And so President Herbert Hoover was a huge proponent of engineering. He said something, and forgive me if I'm misquoting him, but he had kind of a correlation between like doctors and lawyers and engineers. And he said like a doctor makes a mistake and if somebody dies because of that mistake, it was really the sickness that made that person die. A lawyer doesn't, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but a lawyer doesn't quote one of the laws correctly, and his client gets, some kind of a penalty. An engineer doesn't design correctly, somebody dies, right? And it's that engineer's fault. Right? Not always, because sometimes the contractor. Yeah. Not trying to put that on you, because there's a lot of things that that go into play with some of these failures and collapses and stuff. But the engineer has a real responsibility to make sure that we're keeping the public safety and welfare in every single design that we do.
Do you think that these things that have happened, like say the FIU bridge collapse, we had the Miami-Dade College garage also collapsed, and then obviously the Chaplain Towers collapse. Do you feel that has made your job harder, easier? Do you think it's grown your business? It's like, how does that have affected you personally as a structural engineer, these things?
So, it's we try to learn from these lessons, and a good engineer will do the research to find out why did these things happen, because I don't want my projects to happen the same way, right? And so in some of these instances, it was things like they saw something, they said something, but like in Champlain Towers, they saw the cracks, they saw it forming, they said it, they submitted a report. There was no money from management to get it fixed or remediated in time. And, over time it got worse and worse, and then eventually it collapsed. With things like the Miami-Dade College parking garage, it was lack of oversight during construction, where they missed things like grout joints. So where the compressive load from the columns was supposed to go to a grout joint to the foundation, they weren't filled properly. And so because of that, when the load was put on, the whole column shifted and everything progressively collapsed. Things like in the FIU bridge collapse, where it was under accelerated bridge construction, right? ABC is what they called it, where they built the thing next to the side of the road and then they lifted it and set it in place. But also what happened in that project was FDOT said, listen, we need to make an extra lane for the future because there's going to be more population. We need to be able to make this Calle Ocho bigger. And so add an extra 12, I think it was 12 or 15 feet. Don't get me, I'm not sure about that, but they said we need to make it longer. So when you do things like you change the design, you have issues with constructability, you have issues with maintaining your structure over the years. All these things come into play. So a good engineer looks at lessons learned, right, and says,
how do you prevent that though? Like, how do you prevent
education and
experience?
And experience, yeah. With anything, right? Like anything that happens, you have to learn from it.
Like my dad said, la experiencia la vida.
That's it.
Because it's like, how do you, that person that maybe went through that now would put their foot down and say, hey, we're not going to do that. That's, because it's not like until you actually go through something and something tragic happens that you're like, oh, wow, like I've learned my lesson. And unfortunately, some instances are like that. And I try personally as a person to never have to experience things to learn them. And I think that's one of the reasons why me as 34 years old have experienced and have succeeded in a lot of things that other people much older than me haven't done. It's because I can't go through everything in life to to learn from them. You have to learn from other people's mistakes.
That's a great point, because it's like one of the things is, you have to relearn and study history, because if you don't know the history, you're destined to repeat it, right? So if you don't know, if a new engineer who just started out doesn't know the reasons why some of these things happen, like there was a Hyatt hotel, which we learned in college, that the reason why the bridge between the two buildings basically collapsed was because they had too many people on there. It wasn't designed for that load, and they had a moment connection where it wasn't designed for that. It was designed for a shear connection. So they had a bolt at a spacing on a plate that was not designed for that spacing, and so that bended the steel, right? So in things like in college and they try to teach you some of these lessons learned, but really you have to be a person that
is curious.
If you're dedicating your life to something, you want to know all about it. You should know all about it, right?
Curiosity,
and
is
never
the
stop
thing.
learning. Never stop learning. It's somebody who is passionate about something is always going to be learning about it.
Yeah, being curious.
Being curious.
Curious is like the number one thing.
Yeah.
Because if you lose that curiosity, it's like, I don't know. People tell me like, oh, no, bro, you didn't know that because you didn't want to know it. Because if you would have just gone a couple more steps, you would have quickly have realized that would have been the wrong way to have done whatever we're trying to do. I want to go back to the condo thing and to some of these projects that are in repairs, because like Abuelita's house. Abuelita lives in a condo. She lives in a condo. A lot of these people live in condos. Now there's like this massive spotlight on condos and recertifications and stuff like that. Do you really feel that these repairs that are part of these assessments like can really fix some of these buildings and keep them from something like what happened in Surfside happening?
So absolutely. And one of the things that has been lacking for many years is regular maintenance on these buildings and deferred maintenance, where they didn't project the amount of money that they needed to be able to repair these things or to keep these things maintained, and which is what the whole milestone structural inspection in the state of Florida is all about. What the whole SIRS, which is the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, is about, is to make sure that these condos have enough money to be able to make these repairs over the years.
I feel like they don't. I feel like nobody has enough money.
Nobody ever has enough money, and now what happens is they've deferred it for so long. They haven't been collecting any special assessments over the years. They haven't raised their rates at all over the years. And so now all these condo owners are getting hit with like an extra $3,000-$4,000 a month in special assessments. And it's like, some of these people are retired. They can't come up with an extra $3,000 a month.
So do you think somebody should want to live in a condo? Do you think they should sell a condo? Like, what do you think the condo market in terms of that? Because I can't imagine being retired and having to spend an extra $4,000 a month. Like,
I mean, as with anything, it's you have to do your due diligence, right? You're gonna buy a condo, you got to do your due diligence. You got to see how long has the condo been operating, what's the year of the building, How do the reserves look? Do they have, and a lot of what the law has recently changed is going to help that going forward in the future, right? It's going to give people who are buying condos a better understanding of what needs to be done, how long it needs to be done, who's going to pay for it, when it's going to get paid for. And so, because of the laws that were passed, everybody's in a scramble right now because they did put a deadline on everything. And it was a short deadline. It was saying, hey, if your building is 30 years old or 25 years old, if you're within 3 miles of the coastline, then you need to act now. There's no more time. There's no extra time. Get it?
So they changed the amount of years on the recertification?
So the recertification really was a Miami-Dade and Broward thing. And the Keys has a 17-year recertification. But the whole state now, all condos and cooperative associations need to do a 30 years if you're inland or 25 years if you're within 3 miles of the coastline.
Wow.
And then every 10 years thereafter.
So it used to be 40. Now it's 25?
Now it's 25 if you're within the coast and 30 years if you're inland. Yeah.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And so that's way more buildings now that need to start complying with these requirements. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
So,
and we're busy. We're busy because of it.
So you've immediately seen the impact that, I don't know, that law or that regulation has caused immediately on your business.
Yeah, I've been doing recertifications for probably, I think I started doing my first recertification maybe a year or two after I started my company. And that was a little restaurant. We went in, it was down in Homestead. They were looking for an engineer to help them out with the recertification, figure out what's going on. But the requirements weren't as stringent as they are now.
Yeah.
And so, we went in, we took a look at their roof structure, their walls, their floor structures, gave them an idea of, what needed to have that maintenance done. But now it's a lot more intensive, right? Now there's things like on the electrical side of things, if your building operates at 400 amps or more, you have to do infrared thermography. And that's actually pretty cool. It's this device. It's called an infrared thermography camera.
I saw it on the YouTube video you sent.
Yeah. And so our electrical engineers go in and they go through the panels and the gutters and the disconnects and they see if any of the equipment is operating at a higher temperature than it's supposed to, than it's rated for. And that's a big indicator that, this is, sometimes we find 30, 40 degree delta than it's supposed to have a capacity for, which is a hot spot, which could cause a fire.
Wow. That's because it was under designed, or maybe the cables are old, or
maybe
too much stuff on the panel.
Maybe it's too much stuff on the
they
panel.
Keep adding. Papito keeps coming.
You know?
The handyman keeps adding things to the panel.
Exactly. So some of those are the reasons why these things happen. And on the structural side, they've added things like below ground parking garage requirements. They've added special certification if it's a threshold building. So threshold buildings, anything over 3 stories that has an occupancy load of greater than, and so it's you have to have special requirements to do these types of buildings, which we have at Cueto Engineering. We have several engineers that are qualified for all these things. But yeah, the requirements have changed big time in the last few years, and so we've really shifted our business model to be able to cater to that need. Because there are so many buildings now from 40 years to 30 years. So imagine how many buildings that went. From buildings that didn't need the thermography before, now they need that. So yeah, it's
a lot.
It's a lot. And I mean, our primary goal is to be able to service our community. There's a lot of mom and pops that don't know. They don't know that they don't know. Yeah. And so
so you don't just, because we can talk about recertifications, honestly, like
I could
forever, forever.
Yeah.
And before we talk about something else, do you cater? Because I know obviously you have a lot of big projects. Do you cater to the small people in small buildings that also have these certifications that are need?
We do, and so for Miami-Dade, anything that's single family duplex doesn't need recertification, but anything bigger than that is required to have it, right? Unless there's certain exemptions. But yeah, we try to handle everybody, right? We have teams for every different type of project.
Awesome.
From the big county projects to the small mom and pop shops.
What is it? If you need anybody or need somebody for structural engineering or electrical engineering recertifications, his email and his contact is in the description. But
appreciate that.
We could be here for hours, like we talk about.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about a little bit more about you as a person, you as a dad, husband. There's a lot of, people think of Cueto as the engineer, but, that's only a section of your life. Talk to me about the balance between running a business and growing a business. Like, it's, what time is it? Like 9 o'clock at night right now. We can both be, with our families. Talk to me about that dynamic of running a business and being a husband and being a dad and being a son and all that.
So I've got an amazing wife that, and if she's watching this, babe, I love you. You're the best. She's there to help balance me for all that, because there's days where I'm just stuck in work mode, and I need to step away from that, right? And so she's very much the type of person to kind of ground me, not ground me in a bad sense, but
both ways.
Bring me back to earth, right?
Go to your room.
Yeah.
Coño.
No, but bring me back to earth and say, hey, I understand all this is on your mind as a business owner.
Can we get like in a
engineer.
vacuum?
We do, and it's kind of one of those situations where you kind of got to leave it for a minute, and you're gonna see that when you come back to it, you're rejuvenated, right? You're ready to tackle it again, and so she helps me with that a lot. Right?
That's good, because we get like, I don't know what it is, and somebody the other day is like, oh, I don't know how you do it. And like, I don't know if I can't relate to that. It's because we're so deep into it, and we have so much like energy, and we have so much momentum, because I can imagine me changing the AC, and I can imagine you in a crawl space in a house, and like then you get the other project, and then you get the other project, and then you get the other project, and what people sometimes don't realize is that nobody really believed in us, and we believed in ourselves. Like, we knew exactly, like, we didn't know if we would be in this spot, but we knew that we would be here, So it was like, now that we're here, like, we feel that we have to like take advantage of every second possible, because
Definitely. And as a business owner, you're wearing all the hats, right?
I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like, when I first started, they used to say, what's the worst thing you can do? You just go back. I'm like, yeah, it's true. I go back. Like, I'm not going back anymore.
Right.
So it's like, I understand what they say. It's just, for me, it's very, very hard to slow it down, because I always say, like, you're only as good as your last at bat, and it's dangerous.
But at the same time, you've got to balance it, right? Because family is part of your life. Family isn't, for me, family is very important to me. And there's things where, I could be working on a proposal after hours to get out for our client, because it's a good job for us overall, and it's going to help my team, pay my team's salaries and their benefits and the bonuses and all that. But I have a family.
Yeah.
I have a 10-year-old son, Victor. He's in Taekwondo. He's doing basketball and
he's playing
football.
basketball.
Yeah. He's in CCD, and for me, I love basketball. I've always been a Heat fan since 1988 when they started.
You were there.
I used to model my 3-point shot after Tim Hardaway when I was a kid. Right. So I love basketball, but
you should have been a basketball player. What happened?
Bro, they couldn't handle me on the court. I had a killer crossover, man. But yeah, going back to my son, now I see him starting to like some of the same things, and I got to be there for him. And even though he may not have the same engineering kind of desire that I had, I see a very creative aspect in him, and I want to help foster that. I want to help him be who he is. And so, as a dad, that's huge for me. Not really holding his hand through life, but guiding him.
Yeah, guiding him.
And there's things that my dad used to say to me that I say to him now. Like when I was a kid, if we would go to Versailles or La Carreta and I wanted a croqueta, he would say, "Go ask for the croqueta. Don't ask me. I don't work here. Go. ¿Tú quieres una croqueta? Go ask for one."
Yeah, force you to talk to people.
Yeah.
Saluda.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and en español, en inglés no se habla en La Carreta de Versailles. You go ask in Spanish. So that my dad was very influential.
And you're the same with
and I
Victor.
tell my dad the same way. Oh, you want that? Awesome. Go ask for it.
Yeah, that's funny.
Here's the money. Now, in the future, I'm not going to give you the money. You're going to earn it yourself.
Yeah,
but
with interest.
Here's the money. Go learn how to make a transaction, talk to the people, and you're going to need this for the rest of your life. So let's start now.
That's funny. What do you think you would tell to somebody like Victor, or maybe like, Nestor 30 years ago, playing with Legos or whatever, like that might want to go into engineering, or maybe doesn't even know what engineering might be. Like, what do you think are signs that they as kids? Because I'll be honest with you, a lot of kids watch the show, and like, what are signs that they can see and be able to say, oh, yeah, I'm good at that. Like, because sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. And if your parents might not guide you in the right direction, or you might think you want to be I don't know, a doctor, and you might have been an incredible engineer.
So there's, you kind of have to open your mind to everything and learn a little bit about everything, right? If you see that something might interest you, just go learn about it. Go see if you could shadow somebody, right? See if somebody will let you just tag along for a couple days. On the summers, I've had kids who were in high school that thought they might want to do engineering, or their parents said, "Hey, you're good at math, you're good at science, go tag along on an engineer." And they came and hung out with me for a few days, and they saw what it was to be a business owner, to be an engineer, and now one of those kids is in engineering school at FAU right now. And so it's kind of like, nobody. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what you want to do with your life, especially at a young age. Which is why, one of the things I always tried to do was kind of be a jack of all trades and learn a little bit about everything, and then find out what interests you, find out what really you're passionate about, and that's not easy for a lot of people, and a lot of people spend their whole lives looking for it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's because what a terrible feeling, honestly, going your whole life not really accomplishing really what you love and what you're good at. And I always tell people, I talked about it in the first episode of this podcast. I'm very thankful and blessed to be able to love what I do and be good at what I do.
It's a blessing. It really is.
And I feel like everybody should do that. Like, you shouldn't do what you're not good at, and you shouldn't do what you don't love. Like, life is so short. Why are you wasting your time on doing something that somebody else loves and something that you're really not good at?
And a big part of that too is fear, believe it or not. People are afraid of comfort. They don't want to step out of their comfort zone. They have a job that pays their bills. They can pay their bills at the end of the month. Sometimes they can't, and they have to do extra work. But they are afraid of what they don't know, and they're afraid of going after something without knowing the final result. And that's something that you can't teach.
That's what separates us from them, I guess.
That's what kind of, like, you have to.
You got to do it.
You gotta step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
All the people who have been successful in their entire lives.
Every single one.
Every single person. You step out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. Ron is getting ready for a show for bodybuilding, and I told him, what do you think it's going to take to win? And he says, the person who suffers the most.
That's true.
Because it's, at the end of the day, the person who starves themselves the most, the person who watches their diet the most, the person who works out the most,
Discipline.
the person who has the most discipline is going to win.
Yeah.
And that's, that's what business really is. The person that's the most disciplined and the person that's the most committed, the most obsessed, and the most curious is the one that's going to be successful.
Yeah.
And I sometimes get lost in the sauce, like I say, and I focus. You cannot lose focus, because the second you lose focus, you lose the business, unfortunately. Like, and we go back to what I was saying, like, you're only as good as your last at bat. All these people that we're talking about that had these collapses, it's up to the other than Chaplin Tires. Those people's companies really take a massive hit after those struggles. People, and we're not a company that can afford, honestly, something like that. And I don't want to live my whole life,
let that happen. Yeah.
Letting something like that happen. So, so we talked about family. We talked about engineering. We talked about, I guess, a little bit about entrepreneurship. I think that the last thing that I think it's really important about, really talking about is, is where do you want to go as a company? Like, because I see your company and I feel that it's, honestly, I feel like super successful. You have a lot of big projects, you have small projects too, but you're doing a lot of good stuff in the community. Where we met, that project, it's a couple $1,000 project for you. It's not like it's a massive project. So you're doing a lot of good. You have your son, you have your wife. Like you've lost 50 pounds.
Yeah. So when I turned 40, I kind of took a look at I took a trip with my family to New York, and I looked at some of the pictures from that trip, and I was like, boy, that's a big boy.
Yeah, that's a big boy.
And I was just not feeling the way I used to, like invigorated, just ready to wake up and move for the day and do something. And I kind of had one of those aha moment where I was like, hey, listen, get up off your ass and figure out what you need to do to be successful at this. And everybody has their lulls and in their life and their moments where they get a little too comfortable. But when you feel like you're too comfortable, that's when you need to get out of your comfort zone.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, because 15 years ago you're in a residential crawl space for a couple $100 trying to make ends meet. And what do you think is driving you now? Like, what's your motivation and passion to continue to do what you do on a daily basis?
Well, I see that there's a lot in the community that needs that they need education on engineering, on buildings, on structures, and that really is one of my core business values is catering to our community, right? Money is money comes and goes, right? Money comes now. It's nice to have money. It's nice to make money. It's nice to be able to support your employees and your family. But at the end of the day, for me, it's really building structures that are going to last, that are going to be an impact on our community, that are going to be there for the longevity of the buildings, and that really help people to do what they want to do, right? It's as a culture in my company, it's always like, listen, the customer, our clients, they sometimes don't understand what they need, but if we can help shed some light on that for them, in a way that makes it easy for them to understand and easy for them to comply, to corroborate with us and comply with us, then that's really what we're trying to do as a business is improve our community overall.
I love it. I feel like I run through a wall right now. That's how we should start the episode with that clip. And I feel like that's what sets you apart, because my last one was going to be like, what do you think sets you apart? Because there's so many engineers. Because I was talking to Jazz today and to Taylor, and every time we go to a networking event, there's a structural engineer. Every single one. There's, literally any single one. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm a structural engineer. Everybody now has I feel like is a structural engineer. Number one, is that a new thing that structural engineers are kind of like in the forefront of it, also trying to sell their own business to, and trying to network? Because I kind of always felt that, me growing up, that the structural engineer was kind of like, behind the veil, behind the architect, kind of hidden. Right. And I feel like recently, like they're networking, they're on podcasts, they're on Instagram. Like the marketing for engineers is completely different. And for some people might not know, you imagine that the architect is like the general contractor, or imagine that the architect is like the quarterback, and then they, hand off the ball to the structural engineer, make sure that they can structurally do it. They hand it off to an electrical engineer to make sure that the electrical is right. They hand it off to a mechanical engineer to make sure that the space is comfortable and they have the right AC or heating. Make sure that they hand it off to a plumbing engineer. So the architect, essentially is the general contractor on the design side, where it's, now it's the structural engineers are kind of like peeping their head in front of an architect and putting themselves out there. Is that a new thing?
So I think, yeah, it kind of is. And really the industry has been where the architect is your point, right? Your quarterback. Mm-hmm. And this, just like you said, and it's football season, so it's a great analogy. I like that one. The architect, especially with new designs.
It's actually a World Series season right now.
Oh, you're a baseball fan. That's right.
It's World Series season. We have Game 7 a couple of days ago on Game 1 of the World Series, and then but it's okay, no problem. We'll say it's football season for you football fans.
So yeah, I'm a football fan. I'm a basketball fan first.
I know, Miami Heat, 1988, Tim Hardaway.
Tim Hardaway shot.
I got
That's
you.
Me. Yeah, so the architect has always been kind of the point, right? The one running point. And that's where all the owners and the owners reps go to the architect first, and then the architect has his team of engineers, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil engineers, that really pull the whole project together. And there's kind of like a little bit of turmoil between architects, engineers, and contractors, right? The architect has this vision of what's beautiful, what's going to look amazing, what's going to be able to be functional for the client. And then the engineer comes and tells the architect, I need a column here. Mm-hmm. You've got me a 75-foot span with a 12-inch beam. I need a column here. Mm. You know, and he's, but it's going to ruin the aesthetic. So the engineer kind of keeps the architect in check, right? And the contractor...
Or ruins the design.
I like to say more augments the design.
All right, no problem.
And the MEP is the same way. The mechanical engineer, plumbing engineer is the same way. It's like, hey, how am I going to run a duct through here? You have no drop ceiling. You have no space in the structure for me to be able to put this stuff. Yeah. So that's why it's a collaborative effort, really. It's having a good team of people who work together, who understand the how everybody, it's a puzzle, how everybody fits into that puzzle. Mm-hmm. And the contractor has to build it that way. And the contractor finds their own struggles during construction. That this material is not available. My crew is specialized in this. We need to bring on another crew that can do this. You know, and so a lot of times they have to go back to the engineer and say, hey, I can't build this like this right now. Mm-hmm. Can you help me figure out an alternate design? Like when we did the clock, we found a bunch of cables underground. Right, my foundation was supposed to go there. Yeah. So what do? We worked together, right? We worked together and we said, well, listen, let's put a nice sleeve here. We'll increase the size of the foundation. We'll make it eccentric. And that was your idea, which was one of the reasons why I love you as a contractor, is because when I know a contractor has an understanding of how it's designed, and they can help come up with a solution with the engineer, that's a win.
That's a team.
That's a team, brother. Oh man! So you said that to me in a phone call, and I was like, okay, I like this guy. I can work with this guy, you know, and so we found a solution kind of like on the spot, right? Yeah. But yeah, essentially, it's the engineers have come to the forefront a little bit, but I feel like the overall consensus in the industry is still with the architect as the lead, because they're the ones who come up with the designs, right? But when it comes to things
like the recertifications, whatever,
retrofit, right? Things, existing buildings. Then that's the engineer. That's the engineer's on point there. The architect is a subsidiary to that, right? The architect is saying, "Hey, I need to take this column." Then the engineer is saying, "I need to take this column, demo portion of it. We need to get shoring up here. Let's fix it." And then the architect comes back and says, "Okay, well, let's put this nice little finishing touch on it."
Yeah, put the bow on it.
Yeah, put the bow on it. Make it look pretty. Put the lipstick on the pig, as they say.
The point is that what we do has a lot of intricacies. Like, I'm sure whatever you do has a lot of intricacies as well. And this is what we were kind of born to do. I feel like I was pictures 2-3 years old with a hammer in my hand, and you're building Legos. We take what we do very serious. We don't feel that we became contractors and engineers by chance. We feel that God created us, honestly, to do this. God set us apart to do this. That's why it's called the Set Apart Podcast. That's why our motto at Jump Up Construction is set apart. We're not set apart in the way we do things. We're set apart because God created us in a way to do what we do. And there's a lot of intricacies in the things that we do. There's a lot of details in the things we do. We're very curious about the things that you hire us to do. And I think it's important that we document and we talk about things that we do and the experiences that we have, so that you guys can realize that you do matter, that the condo that you're living in does matter, and that you're educated in the building that you are living in, so that tragic things, honestly, don't happen, and that can prevent you from doing that. And maybe you're a kid, maybe you're in high school and you're thinking about maybe being an engineer or contractor. Reach out to us. You come here for a couple days, weeks, whatever you want, but we want you to do what God has intended and created you to do, because if you can find what you love to do and what you're good at for the rest of your life and find a way to make money, honestly, I think that's the perfect recipe for success and for happiness and for peace. And life is tough as it is, so I feel like we really got to focus on that. So we appreciate you being on the episode and showing and telling us everything that you've done, and hope you guys learned something today. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments. But most importantly, Subscribe, like, share, follow, and thank you for all the support that you guys have given us. We're 32 episodes deep, and every single episode is a blessing, and we appreciate you guys being along for the ride. So catch you in the next one.